So you say you can't pay your rent, the giant alien woman warned the human. What followed changed everything. The alien city of Karzun never truly slept. Tall towers made of dark metal rose into the red sky. Strange lights moved like slow stars between the buildings, and deep below, the ground hummed with energy from machines older than memory. In one of the lowest districts, far from the shining centers of power, a small human room shook slightly as heavy footsteps approached. Inside that room stood a human foreigner named Elias. He was thin, tired, and far from home. Elias had come to this world with hope. He stayed because he had no choice. Rent day had arrived again, and he already knew what that meant. The door did not knock. It bent inward with a loud metallic groan. The frame cracked as a massive shadow filled the doorway. She had arrived. She was tall enough to touch the ceiling without trying. Her skin was pale blue and marked with glowing lines. 4 strong arms rested calmly at her sides. Her eyes shone like cold moons. She was the owner of the building, the ruler of this small section of the city, and the one creature Elias had hoped to avoid today. "So you say you can't pay your rent," she said slowly. Her voice was deep and smooth. It carried power without effort. The walls seemed to listen when she spoke. Elias looked up at her. Most humans lowered their eyes at this point. Most begged or cried or tried to run. Elias did none of those things. "I do not have the credits yet," he said calmly. His voice was steady, not loud, not weak, just honest. The giant alien woman tilted her head slightly. That small movement caused dust to fall from the ceiling. Around them, other aliens began to gather. They always came when she visited a tenant. Humans were rare here, and a human in debt was entertainment. Soft laughter echoed from the hallway. Lions placed quiet bets. The giant woman stepped closer. Her shadow swallowed Elias completely. "You humans always say that," she replied. "You arrive with big dreams and empty hands." She lifted one massive finger and pointed it at his chest. "In this city, unpaid rent has consequences." Her lips curved into a slow smile, and it was not a friendly one. Elias felt the pressure in the air. He felt the fear trying to rise inside him, but he pushed it down. Fear was a luxury he could not afford. Instead, he studied her. Her stance, her breathing, her tone. He noticed small details others missed, and that was why he was still alive. "I understand the rules," Elias said. His words surprised the listeners. Humans usually argued at this point. He did not. The giant woman blinked, just once. "Do you?" she asked. "Because the rules do not favor the weak." A nearby alien laughed openly. Another whispered something cruel. The crowd expected pain. They expected screaming. Elias slowly reached into his pocket. Several guards shifted their weapons. He pulled out a small data chip and held it up, not as payment, but as proof. "This is my work," he said. "It is not finished yet, but it will be worth more than this building." The giant woman stared at the chip. Then she laughed. Her laughter shook the room. It echoed down the street. "You dare insult me with promises," she said. "You dare stand in my property and offer hope instead of credits." She leaned down until her face was close to his. Her eyes searched his, looking for weakness, looking for lies. What she found confused her. Elias was afraid, but he was also ready for something far worse than rent. "Very well," she said at last. "I will not throw you into the streets today." The crowd murmured in disappointment. Instead, she straightened and raised her voice. "I will test you. If you fail, you will pass." In ways far more painful than credits, Elias nodded once, as if this was expected, as if this was part of his plan. The giant woman turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. She looked back and added one final warning. Humans break easily. Her footsteps faded into the distance. The crowd slowly dispersed. Whispers filled the air, some mocking, some curious. Elias exhaled quietly. He looked at the damaged door, then at the chip in his hand, and allowed himself a small smile. He had survived the first step. The real danger was only beginning. And before the next part begins, if you enjoy calm tension, smart humans, and HFY sci-fi stories like this, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps these stories continue. Elias did not know it yet, but the giant alien woman had made one mistake. She believed this was about rent, and that mistake would change everything. The room felt larger after she left, not because the walls moved, but because the danger had stayed behind. Elias stood alone for a long moment, listening to the fading echo of her steps. Each step reminded him how close he was to losing everything. Outside, the city returned to its normal noise. Machines hissed, engines roared, alien voices blended into a constant hum. To them, this was just another day. To Elias, it was a countdown. He sat slowly on the edge of his narrow bed. The metal frame creaked under his weight. He opened his hand and looked at the small data chip again. It was old, scratched, and worthless to anyone who did not understand it. This chip was the reason he was here. This chip was the reason he had crossed space, and this chip was the reason he could not fail. Long before he became a tenant in a broken building, before a giant alien woman became his landlord, Elias had been a citizen of Earth, a quiet engineer on a forgotten world. Earth had taught humans one lesson very well. Survival was never fair. When resources ran low, humans adapted. When hope disappeared, humans invented it again. The project Elias worked on was never meant to be public. It was meant to save colonies, to stabilize energy systems on dying planets, to turn chaos into balance. But powerful people feared what they could not control. The project was shut down, data erased, teams scattered, and Elias was blamed for asking the wrong questions. When he ran, he did not run from danger. He ran toward opportunity. Alien worlds were risky, but they were also desperate. Karzun was one of those worlds, rich in power, poor in wisdom, advanced technology built on unstable foundations, a city that looked strong but hid many cracks. Elias had seen those cracks the first week he arrived. Energy fluctuations, wasteful systems, rigid rules, aliens trusted size and force. They underestimated efficiency and flexibility. That was the human advantage, not strength, not speed, but adaptation. He stood and moved to the small window. From here he could see the lower city, broken lights, patched walkways, uneven power fields, a perfect place for failure or transformation. Elsewhere in the city, the giant alien woman walked through her private hall. Her name was Kael'thra. Among her kind, she was known as patient and cruel, a dangerous combination. She did not forget faces, she did not forget debts, and she did not forget the way the human had looked at her. Humans usually trembled. This one measured that disturbed her more than fear ever could. Kael'thra paused before a wide window, watching traffic flow beneath her. She replayed the scene in her mind. The calm voice, the steady eyes, the data chip. A lie would have smelled like panic. Confidence without strength would have sounded desperate. But Elias had offered neither. He had offered time. Time was dangerous. Time allowed change. She summoned one of her aides. "Find out who that human is," she ordered, "where he came from, and why he is still alive." Back in his room, Elias prepared. He cleaned his tools, checked his notes, and reviewed alien laws again. Alien laws were strict, but they were also predictable. Rules built for giants moved slowly. Small creatures could move between them. He knew Kael'thra would test him, not with kindness, but with humiliation. Aliens valued dominance above all else. If he reacted with anger, he would lose. If he reacted with fear, he would break. So he chose patience, the hardest human skill to master. As the city lights dimmed for the night cycle, a message flashed on his wall console, a single symbol, a location marker. No explanation, no time, just an order disguised as an invitation. Elias stared at it, then quietly smiled again. The test had ready begun. Far above him, Kael'thra watched the same marker appear on her display. She expected excuses. She expected delay. She expected weakness. What she did not expect was that the human would arrive early. As Elias stepped into the glowing streets, alien eyes followed him, some curious, some hungry, some amused. None of them understood one thing. Humans did not need to be the strongest in the room. They only needed to survive long enough to change the rules. And tonight, the giant alien woman was about to learn why humans were never meant to be underestimated. The location marker led Elias to the old industrial ring of the city. This part of Karzoon was loud, dirty, and forgotten. Broken machines rested like dead giants, and the air smelled of heat and metal. Tall floodlights turned on as Elias stepped forward. Their harsh glow revealed a wide open platform. Dozens of aliens stood around it in a half-circle, all waiting, all watching. At the center of the platform stood Kael'thra, even larger than she had seemed inside the building. Her shadow stretched far across the metal ground. Her arms were crossed, her posture relaxed. "You arrived," she said. Her voice echoed through speakers hidden in the walls. "On time." "I was invited," Elias replied. He stopped a safe distance away, his hands visible, his back straight. Soft laughter spread through the crowd. A human speaking calmly to a giant always amused them. Kael'thra raised one hand. The laughter stopped at once. "This is your test," she announced. "Fail, and your debt will be collected in flesh and service. Pass," she paused, "and I may allow you to live another cycle." The crowd leaned forward. Some aliens activated recording devices. Humiliation was valuable entertainment. Kael'thra gestured to the side. Massive metal crates were dragged into view by machines. They were heavy, dense, and sealed tight. "You will move these," she said, "from this line to that one." She pointed to markers far apart. A simple task. The crowd lagged. Heat again. Even some smaller aliens shook their heads. Humans were weak. Everyone knew that. Elias walked slowly to the first crate. He placed his hand against the cold metal. He did not push. He did not pull. Instead, he stepped back and looked around the platform, at the lights, at the machines, at the ground itself. Kael'thra frowned slightly. "Are you confused?" she asked. "Or are you already giving up?" Elias shook his head. "I am learning," he said. That answer caused a ripple of confusion. He moved to a nearby control panel, old, damaged, barely working. Most aliens ignored such things. Elias did not. He knelt down and opened it. Sparks flew. Guards shifted nervously. "He is cheating," someone shouted. Kael'thra raised her hand again. "Let him," she said. "Watching him fail is more interesting." Elias adjusted a setting, then another. The ground beneath the crate began to hum softly, slowly, almost gently. The massive crate lifted a few inches. The crowd went silent. Elias placed his hands on it again. This time it moved, not with strength, but with balance. He guided the crate forward. Step by careful step, sweat formed on his brow, but his movements stayed steady. The crate crossed the line. A clear signal flashed. Task complete. The silence broke into shocked whispers. Kael'thra's eyes narrowed. "You used the platform's magnetic field," she said, her tone sharp. "Yes," Elias replied. "It was inefficient before." The second task began immediately. No rest, no pause. Kael'thra signaled again. A restraint collar was brought forward, thick, heavy, and designed for dangerous prisoners. It pulsed with energy. You will wear this, Kael'thra said. It will weaken your muscles and slow your mind. Then you will repeat the task. This time the crowd was sure. This time failure was guaranteed. The collar locked around Elias's neck. Pain surged through his vision blurred, his legs shook, he nearly fell. The crowd gasped, some cheered. Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment. He controlled his breathing. Humans had. Trained for pain for centuries, pain did not always mean defeat. He moved again, slower now, but still thinking. Instead of lifting the crate, he rerouted power, shifted angles, used gravity. The crate slid forward, not fast, not clean, but enough. When it crossed the line, the platform flashed again, confirmation undeniable. Kael'thra took one step forward, her calm mask cracking. "This test was meant to break you," she said. Elias looked up at her, his face pale, but his eyes clear. "You chose the wrong kind of test," he replied. "You tested strength. I specialize in survival." The crowd erupted into noise, confusion, anger, disbelief. Some aliens looked uneasy now. Kael'thra raised her hand slowly. The noise died down, her expression unreadable. "This is not over," she said quietly. "In fact," she added, "this was only the beginning." Guards removed the collar. Elias staggered but stayed standing. As he walked away from the platform, he felt many eyes on his back, some no longer mocking, some calculating. Behind him, Kael'thra watched in silence. For the first time, the giant alien woman did not see a weak tenant. She saw a problem, and problems on Kar Zuun were either crushed or studied very carefully. Elias did not return home after the test. The guards escorted him through a different path, a longer path, one filled with narrow corridors and silent walls. This was not a mistake. It was a message. Kar Zuun liked to remind visitors where power lived and where it crushed those who forgot their place. Elias walked calmly, but inside his mind moved faster than the machines around him. He replayed every second of the test, every reaction, every pause, every look in Kael'thra's eyes. She had not expected him to pass, that much was clear. But more important, she had not expected him to think. That was the real crack. The guards finally stopped before a sealed chamber. The door opened with a heavy sound. Inside was not a cell. It was a waiting room, simple, clean, and deliberately uncomfortable. A place meant to keep someone alert, not safe, not threatened, balanced between the two. Elias sat. He waited. Time passed strangely on alien worlds. Minutes stretched. Silence pressed against the mind. This was another test. Patience. Elsewhere, far above the lower districts, Kael'thra stood before a wide council table. Holographic symbols floated in the air, showing data from the platform test. Her advisors spoke in low tones. Some were angry, some were impressed, none were relaxed. "He exploited infrastructure inefficiency," one advisor said. "A clever trick, but still a trick." "Humans should not think like that," another replied. "They are too small, too short-lived." Kael'thra listened without interrupting, her eyes fixed on the image of Elias guiding the crate, calm under pressure, focused under pain. "He did not break any rules," she said finally. "And that is the problem." The room grew quiet. "Our systems reward strength," she continued. "They punish resistance. But he did neither. He adapted. Adaptation was dangerous. It spread quietly. It changed systems without attacking them. "Prepare the next phase," Kael'thra ordered. "I want to see how deep this goes." Back in the waiting chamber, Elias felt the shift before it happened. The air pressure changed slightly. The lights dimmed. The door opened again. Not guards this time, but a single drone, floating silently. A message appeared in the air, a set of rules, a task description, and a warning. The task was simple on the surface. He was to stabilize a failing energy node in the lower city. one that giant engineers had already declared useless. If he failed, his rent debt would double. If he succeeded, he would earn time. Time was all Elias wanted. The drone led him through service tunnels, past leaking pipes and flickering panels. This part of the city was ignored by giants, too small, too fragile, too inefficient. But to Elias, it was familiar. The energy node was old, poorly designed, overpowered and underbalanced, a perfect example of alien thinking, more force instead of better control. Elias knelt beside it, tools already in hand. He did not rush. He listened. Machines spoke in patterns. Humans learned to hear them. He rerouted flow, reduced output, balanced pressure, simple steps, basic logic. The node stabilized. Lights across the district stopped flickering. Systems calmed. The city breathed easier. Observers watched in silence, some confused, some uneasy. Above, Kael'thra felt the change ripple through her city. Data confirmed what she already sensed. The human had succeeded, not with strength, not with authority, but with understanding. Elias stood and wiped his hands. The drone hovered closer, scanning, confirming, recording. A new message appeared, short and clear. You are no longer considered weak. Elias allowed himself a slow breath. That label mattered. On Kar Zun, it meant survival odds had shifted, but it also meant something else. Attention from the shadows. Kael'thra watched through distant sensors, her expression unreadable, her thoughts heavy. She had wanted to break a tenant. Instead, she had uncovered a variable. Humans were not strong, that was true. But strength was loud and predictable. Humans were quiet. They slipped between systems. They survived long enough to learn. Kael'thra clenched one fist slowly, not in anger, but in thought. If he continues, she murmured, he may change more than his debt. Far below, Elias walked back into the glowing streets, unaware of how many eyes now followed him. He had gained time, but time was dangerous, because every cycle he survived, the giant alien woman understood one truth more clearly. This human was not a problem to crush. He was a problem that could grow. The lower city felt different after the energy node stabilized. Lights stayed steady, machines stopped screaming, and for the first time in many cycles, people noticed. Elias noticed too. Not the praise, not the whispers, but the pattern. When systems calmed, behavior changed. When fear dropped, curiosity rose, and curiosity was dangerous. As Elias walked through the market streets, aliens watched him more closely now, not laughing, not mocking, but measuring. He kept his head down and his pace slow. Confidence was useful, but visibility was risky. Above the city, Kael'thra received reports, not just about the node, but about the reactions. Lower district productivity had increased. Energy loss had dropped. Maintenance requests were changing tone. Instead of complaints, there were questions. Kael'thra's advisors gathered again, their voices sharp, uneasy. The human is influencing systems, one said, indirectly. He is changing behavior without authority, another added. That is not normal. Kael'thra said nothing at first, her eyes fixed on a projection of city flow data, patterns shifting like living things. Authority can be challenged, she finally said, but systems must remain loyal. A new order was issued, quietly, carefully. Elias was summoned again, this time not to a platform, but to a public arbitration hall. The message was polite, almost respectful. That alone raised alarms in his mind. Public halls meant rules. Rules meant leverage, and leverage meant traps. The hall was vast and open, built to make small creatures feel smaller. Hundreds of spectators filled the upper tiers. Word had spread. Caelthra stood at the center, not towering this time, but seated on a raised structure, a symbol of lawful power. "Human Elias," she announced, "your actions have affected this district. Some claim improvement. Others claim disruption." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elias stood alone on the floor, no guards beside him. Another signal. "You will explain yourself," Caelthra continued, "in accordance with city law." Elias nodded slowly. "I will," he said, "as the law allows." That phrase caused a pause. Several advisors shifted. Caelthra's eyes narrowed slightly. He was choosing his words carefully. Elias spoke clearly, not loud, not defensive. "I followed existing regulations," he said. "I used approved tools. I improved efficiency within allowed limits." A display lit up behind him, showing exact clauses from city law, rules written long ago, ignored by those too large to care. Gasps spread through the hall. No one expected a human to quote law, let alone understand it better than giants. Caelthra leaned forward slightly. "You studied our rules," she said. "Yes," Elias replied, "because they protect the city, and anyone who understands them." The meaning landed slowly. Then, all at once, if Elias acted within law, punishing him would expose weakness in the system, and systems hated exposure. Caelthra felt it then. The shift, the balance moving. She had brought him here to control him. Instead, she had given him a stage. "Your rent is still unpaid," she said sharply, trying to pull power back. "Yes," Elias agreed calmly. "And city law allows debt restructuring when public service is provided." Silence fell, heavy and complete. The advisors stared at the displays, confirming, verifying, finding no error. Caelthra's fingers tightened against her seat, not in rage, but in realization. The human was not fighting her. He was using the city itself. After a long moment, she spoke again, her voice controlled, measured. "Your debt will be delayed," she announced, "pending further evaluation." The crowd reacted instantly. Shock, excitement, confusion. Elias bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but in respect. As he turned to leave, he felt it clearly now, the eyes on him, not as prey but as a variable. High above, Caelthra remained seated long after. The hall emptied. Her advisors waited, silent. She had underestimated a tenant, then a test subject. Now she faced a catalyst. "Prepare contingencies," she said quietly. "If humans learn this, they will not ask for permission." Far below, Elias stepped back into the city flow, heart steady, mind sharp. He had not won, not yet, but the tables had shifted, and once systems began to bend, they never returned to their original shape. The city did not celebrate openly, but something had changed. It was quiet, too quiet. Elias felt it as he walked through familiar streets. People moved aside without laughing. Vendors watched him with careful eyes. Guards no longer ignored him. Respect on Kar Zun was never given. It was calculated, measured, and often temporary. High above, Caelthra stood alone in her private chamber. The walls displayed flowing data from across the city. Energy use, labor output, public sentiment, all slowly shifting. Every change pointed back to one source, a human tenant who should not have mattered. Caelthra had ruled through size and fear for many cycles. Her kind believed order came from pressure. Push hard enough, and everything stayed in place. But Elias did not push. He slipped, he adjusted, he made small changes that spread like cracks in stone. She clenched her fists slowly, not in anger, but in decision. If the system could not break him quietly, then it would confront him directly. Elias received the next summons at dawn cycle. This time it was not polite. It was formal and final. He was ordered to appear in Caelthra's inner court. a place few outsiders ever entered, a place where negotiations ended. The court was smaller than he expected. No audience, no public display, only power. Kael'thra stood at the center, no raised seat, no symbols, just her full height and presence. "You have gone far for a tenant," she said, her voice calm, too calm. Elias stopped a few steps away. "I followed the rules," he replied. "As written." She circled him slowly, each step heavy, each movement deliberate. "You weakened my control," she said, "without touching it. You turned my own laws into tools." Elias remained still. "I improved what was failing," he answered. "The city benefited." Kael'thra stopped in front of him, her shadow covering him completely. "You belied. That protects you," she said. "You believe usefulness equals safety." For a moment, it felt like the first day again, like the broken door, like the threat of punishment. But Elias did not look away. "No," he said quietly. "I believe balance protects everyone." That word hung between them, balance. Kael'thra laughed softly, not mocking, not cruel, tired. "My people do not value balance," she said. "We value dominance." "Then your people will fall," Elias replied, not as a threat, but as a fact. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. Guards shifted outside the chamber, waiting for a signal, a command to end this conversation. Kael'thra studied him carefully, not his size, not his strength, but his certainty. "You are dangerous," she said at last, "not because you resist, but because you endure." She stepped back, and for the first time she lowered her head slightly, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "The city cannot remove you," she continued. "Your actions are now tied to public stability." Elias understood at once. This was the edge of victory and the edge of a deeper trap. "You will work for me," Kael'thra said, "officially. You will advise on infrastructure and systems. And in return," Elias asked calmly, "your debt is erased," she replied. "Your safety guaranteed. For now." The words were careful, measured. Elias considered his response. Humans survived by choosing the right moment, not the loud one. "I will help the city," he said, "but not as your property." Kael'thra's eyes narrowed. "Then what do you propose?" "A contract," Elias answered. "Equal terms." The guard stiffened. No one asked Kael'thra for equality, but she did not strike. She did not shout. She paused. In that pause, the giant alien woman realized the truth. She could crush him now, but the city would suffer, the systems would destabilize, the cracks would wit. Then, or she could adapt, the hardest choice for any ruler. "Very well," she said slowly. "A contract." The moment the words left her mouth, power shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. Elias inclined his head, respectfully, not submissively, as he turned to leave the inner court. Kael'thra watched him go, her expression unreadable. She had not lost her size, she had not lost her strength, but she had lost something far more important, the belief that strength alone was enough. And in the quiet chamber, the giant alien woman understood. The human had not fallen, he had forced her to bend. The contract changed everything, but not in ways the city expected. Elias did not move into a palace. He did not wear symbols of power. He returned to the lower districts, to the places that still flickered and failed. That choice confused many. On Kar-Zun, power always moved upward, never down. But humans had learned something different long ago. Real control came from understanding the foundation, not the tower. Across the city, small changes continued. Energy stabilized, machines lasted longer, workers argued less and solved more. No speeches announced these changes, no flags were raised, they simply worked. Aliens began copying the methods, quietly at first, then openly. Caelthra watched it all from above. Every report confirmed the same truth. The human influence was spreading, not through fear, not through force, but through results that frightened her more than rebellion ever had. One cycle, an emergency alert echoed through the city. A major power core in the upper district destabilized, the kind of failure that destroyed sectors. Engineers rushed in. Giants pulled levers and increased output, making the problem worse. Panic spread. Evacuation orders followed. Caelthra stood before the failing core, heat waves bending the air, her advisors shouting conflicting commands. Then a single message appeared on her console from Elias. "Stop adding force. Give me control access." For one long moment, Caelthra hesitated. This was the heart of her city, the symbol of her rule. Trusting a human here meant risking everything. The core screamed louder. Cracks formed. Time ran out. "Grant access," she ordered. Elias arrived not in armor, not with guards, but with tools and calm. He shut down systems others feared to touch, reduced power instead of increasing it, let the core breathe. Alarm slowed, then stopped. Silence fell over the chamber. Awed by stunned disbelief, the city was saved, not by strength, but by restraint. Caelthra looked at Elias, truly looked, and saw what her kind had always missed. Humans did not conquer worlds. They survived them, and survival reshaped everything around it. Word spread faster than any command. Humans were no longer weak tenants. They were problem solvers, adapters, catalysts. Other districts requested human advisors. Other cities sent observers. The idea traveled beyond Karzun. Caelthra stood before the council days later, not as a towering ruler, but as a leader who had learned. "We underestimated a species," she said, "not because they lacked strength, but because they refused to rely on it." No one argued. Elias never demanded titles, never claimed ownership. He simply worked. His old debt was forgotten, his broken door replaced, his name spoken with respect. One cycle, as the city lights glowed steadily for the first time in memory, Caelthra met Elias on a quiet balcony. "You could leave," she said. "Other worlds would welcome you now." Elias looked out over the city. "I know," he replied. "But this place still needs balance." Caelthra nodded slowly. Understanding at last, the giant alien woman had not lost her power, she had transformed it, and the human foreigner, once threatened over rent, had changed an entire world, not by standing taller, but by standing firm, because humans did not need to dominate the room. They only needed to survive long enough to prove that strength was never the answer, and that was the lesson Karzun would never forget.